All right. Greetings and salutations. Can you hear me? First and foremost. Greetings and salutations. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. With me as ever, my narcoleptic co-host, Wolfgang Mothhammer. Hello, Aaron Powell. I'm glad, Dari, that Olive can hear and see. Wonderful. I'm glad Amanda Benjamin still has power. I myself am cautiously anticipating a power out in the next 24 hours. It is forecasted to snow in the next couple of days with huge high wind warnings for tomorrow. Yeah, Will, it's Mothhammer was the name that he was dubbed and earned in the late spring, early summer of this year. We had this huge boom in the moth population, and I swear the thrill of constant moth hunting must have added years to this guy's life. There was just noticeable a noticeable uptick in his just general behavior and energy that has stuck with him largely all through the summer. I hadn't seen him so energetic in something like a year or so previous to the great moth infestation of 2020. All right. Well, glad we got the stuff working. I had some technical snafus this evening. Welcome to the Martin Luther King Jr. Day edition of Fireside Tailes with Wolfgang. So, a slight preamble to this evening's readings. Everything read tonight is in the author's own words. I did not go through and edit anything to be updated more politically correct terminology. And in a similar vein, one of the more popular aspects of this show is the different character voices that I do. And in this particular occasion, I will not be doing any other voices than the one that you are hearing this very moment. I will be happy to elaborate and expand if anyone is curious if it's less than obvious why. I don't intend that this be a solemn occasion on this particular evening. However, well, in short, I wouldn't want anything to be interpreted as cartoonish or over the top. I want everything to have its due reverence. And yeah, Will, I agree. Martin Luther King Day is a massively important time for us to reflect upon. Hello, Don Emery, Angelica, Orchids for Pam, or as I call her, Mom. So, hello, Malika. So glad you could join us. And Well, wonderful. We have a wonderful assembly of community here. I think this is a wonderful thing and time to start. I'm going to start this evening setting the tone with Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes was great inspiration to Martin Luther King Jr., and I think this opening poem will beautifully illustrate why. This is I Dream a World by Langston Hughes. I dream a world where man, no other man, will scorn. I dream a world where man, no other man, will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know street freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you may be, will share the bounties of the earth and every man is free. Where wretchedness will hang its head and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream my world. Yeah, he fits in this bed just barely, but this is the liquid nature of cats that take the shape of their container, or in this case, little furry bed. So, as I said, I think Langston Hughes was a perfect preamble. This is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from the March on Washington, August 28th, 1963. From the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King Jr. I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of light of hope to the millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So, we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was the promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We've also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. But there's something that I must say to my people who stand on the worn threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the city. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating "for whites only." We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be plain and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. This is the faith we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my father died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants, Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. There are many of you who know me personally and deeply, and know that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and I have one significant division in our outlook, which is that I personally have no belief in a personal God looking down on us. I don't see any reason to believe that that's the way that nature works. But the bigger point, the point where we come back together in total agreement, is that before any of us were African Americans, before any of us were Europeans, before any of us were Native Americans, before any of us were Asians, Australians, Kiwis, before any of us were any of those designations, we were all African. Everything that we understand about biological evolution as conferred by fossil record, as conferred by genetic tabulation, all agrees that all humans come from the Afar Valley in East Africa, part of what's modern-day Ethiopia. And I completely and totally reverberate viscerally with Dr. King. He refers to us as all of God's children. Down at the genetic level, we're one species with one origin if you go back far enough. This next author. This next author was one whom my mom met in person. Orchids for Pam in the chat. A tiny inkling of family background is that my mom taught at a place called Lincoln School. At that time, and Mom, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's I believe she taught literature at an all-black school in the 1970s, in the Vietnam era. Again, please tell me if my dates are incorrect. I got the privilege of not understanding racism in America. I know I'll never get that. I know I will never understand. I've had glimpses in my life when I was under 25, for example, and taking cross-country tours. I knew what it was like to be prejudiced against in that I couldn't rent a hotel room. But at the same time, I knew it was temporary. So I know that I don't understand. I know what it's like to be a white blues singer, but at the same time, it's more like a glimpse. I know I don't really understand. Part of recognizing the full depth of that rift is the incredible parents that I was blessed with. And my mom teaching at an all-black school for a lot of years before I was born. I hope some of that was imparted to me. So, this next author is Dr. Margaret Taylor Burroughs, who lived from 1915 to 2010. Mom's note on this was that Dr. Margaret Burroughs and Gwendolyn Brooks, who was the U.S. Poet Laureate of Illinois, worked to get together in Chicago for the Southside Community Center. Mom specifically, personally notes that this poem that I'm about to read is very special to her personally. She says, I don't think I've ever gotten through a whole reading of it without getting all teary-eyed, and she's telling me that I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Margaret Burroughs when she came to Mom's classroom for a special visit with her poetry, art, and conversation. Mom described Margaret as a very sweet, simple presence with underlying confidence of character and strong spirit, a person who calmly, serenely got things done. When Dr. Burroughs came to my mom's classroom, anyone in other classes who wished to come was invited. Mom said she was my favorite special guest ever. I remember this poem from my college classes and thought it very moving and outstanding then, as I still do now. God, and I remember Mom showing me this poem, reading it to me, or leaving a book open. I don't remember how. I just remember this from when I was really young. What shall I tell my black children? Excuse me, I'm already messing up the title. What shall I tell my children who are black? Reflections of an African American Mother. By Dr. Margaret Burroughs, 1963. What shall I tell my children who are black of what it means to be a captive in this dark skin? What shall I tell my dear one, fruit of my womb, of how beautiful they are when everywhere they turn they are faced with aberrance of everything that is black? Villains are black with black hearts. A black cow gives no milk. A black hen lays no eggs. Bad news comes bordered in black. Black is evil, and evil is black, and devil's food is black. What shall I tell my dear ones raised in a white world? A place where white has been made to represent all that is good and pure and fine and decent, where clouds are white and dolls. And heaven surely is a white, white place with angels robed in white and cotton candy and ice cream and milk and ruffled Sunday dresses and dream houses and long, sleek Cadillacs. And angels' food is white. All white. What can I say, therefore, when my child comes home in tears because a playmate has called him black, big-lipped, fat-nosed, and nappy-headed? What will he think when I dry his tears and whisper, "Yes, that is true, but no less beautiful and dear"? How shall I lift up his head, get him to square his shoulders, look his adversaries in the eye, confident of the knowledge of his worth, serene under his sable skin and proud of his own beauty? What can I do to give him strength that he may come through life's adversities as a whole human being, unwarped and human in a world of biased laws and inhuman practices, that he might survive? And survive he must, for who knows, perhaps this black child here bears the genius to discover the cure for cancer or to chart the course for exploration of the universe. So he must survive for the good of all of humanity. He must and will survive. I have drunk deeply of late from the foundation of my black culture, sat at the knee and learned from Mother Africa, discovered the truth of my heritage, the truth so often obscured and omitted. And I find I have much to say to my black children. I will lift up their heads in proud blackness with the story of their fathers and their fathers' fathers, and I shall take them into a way back time of kings and queens who ruled the Nile and measured the stars and discovered the laws of mathematics, upon whose backs have been built the wealth of continents. I will tell him this and more. His heritage shall be his weapon, and his armor will make him strong enough to win any battle he may face. And since this story is often obscured, I must sacrifice to find it for my children, even as I sacrificed to feed, clothe, and shelter them. So this I will do for them if I love them. None will do it for me. I must find the truth of heritage for myself and pass it on to them. In years to come, I believe, because I have armed them with the truth, my children and my children's children will venerate me, for it is the truth that will make us free. Yeah. For it is the truth that will make us free. That is Sam Pinello, thank you for joining us. Glad to see you have survived the flood. I also want to point out the coffee cup that I'm drinking from. See if I can get the glare off of it. This came from long-time enthusiast and supporter of the show, Svetlana, who is here in the chat. We got a wonderful delivery of lots of catnip toys, gourmet cat food, a huge bottle of whiskey, several other things, and this Fireside Tailes with Wolfgang coffee cup. Thank you so much, Svetlana. It is just marvelously sweet. And as a matter of fact, I'm drinking in it tea that Miss Josepha gave me about a month previous. Well, the whiskey was for me. Everything else in the thing was for Wolfgang. Svetlana, thank you for your continued and continuous generosity. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. It was just extraordinarily warming. Thank you. Yes, Julie Emery. I like whiskey. And speaking of deliveries, I got a huge bottle of Jameson delivered at my front door about 30 hours ago now. Yes. Thank you very much for the Irish whiskey that is going into the tea that Josepha gave me that I am drinking out of the mug that Svetlana gave me. Like, everything about this beverage is literally a gift. Thank you all. Yeah, it's just such wonderful people in this community. I'm just so blown away by what an awesome community is coming together over these readings, over these stories. I can't even thank you enough. I have virtually now on the internets gotten to know 3 different Emerys, and they're all just awesome. I'm so thankful for you all. I'm going to go on with Miss Gwendolyn Brooks. Gwendolyn Brooks lived from 1917 to the year 2000. In 1950, Gwendolyn was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. And this made her the first African American to receive the honor. In 1968, she was named the Poet Laureate of Illinois until her passing. She was the U.S. Poet Laureate from 1985 to 1986. She loved the poetry of Paul Laurence Dunbar. And earmark that for later because I'm going to close the evening with some Paul Laurence Dunbar. Paul Laurence Dunbar influenced more than one writer that you'll hear from this evening. But when Gwendolyn Brooks was a young girl, she kept a bust of Paul Laurence Dunbar next to a series of his poetry books on the top shelf of her writing desk. She said it was, quote, to inspire me whenever I write, unquote. And I love this. All of these particular notes were sent to me from my mom, the literature teacher, But the greatest detail that ties all this together of relevance is that Gwendolyn Brooks's mother would often encourage her by saying, "You'll be the next Lady Paul Lawrence Dunbar." So this poem is called "Of Robert Frost" by Gwendolyn Brooks. There's a little lightning in his eyes, iron at the mouth. His brows ride neither too far up nor down. He is splendid with a place to stand, some glowing in the common blood, some specialness within. This next poem is Sadie and Maude by Gwendolyn Brooks. Maude went to college. Sadie stayed at home. Sadie scraped life with a fine tooth comb. She didn't leave a tangle in. Her comb found every strand. Sadie was one of the livingest chits in all the land. Sadie bore 2 babies under her maiden name. Maude and Ma and Papa nearly died of shame. When Sadie said her last so long, her girls struck out from home. Sadie had left as heritage her fine-tooth comb. Maude, who went to college, is a thin brown mouse. She is living all alone in this old house. And the final bit by Gwendolyn Brooks is our first short story of the evening. This is Home by Gwendolyn Brooks. What had been wanted was this always to the last, the talking softly on this porch, with the snake plant and the jardiniere in the southwest corner, and the obstinate slip from Aunt Eppie's magnificent Michigan fern at the left side of the friendly door. Mama, Maude Martha, and Helen rocked slowly in their rocking chairs and looked at the late afternoon light on the lawn and at the emphatic iron of the fence and at the poplar tree. These things might soon be theirs no longer. Those shafts and pools of light, the tree, the graceful iron, might soon be viewed passively by different eyes. Papa was to have gone that noon during his lunch hour to the office of the homeowner's loan. If he had not succeeded in getting another extension, they would be leaving this house in which they had lived for more than 14 years. There was little hope. The homeowner's loan was hard. They sat, making their plans. "We'll be moving into a nice flat somewhere," said Mama. "Somewhere on South Park or Michigan or in Washington Park Court." Those flats, as the girls and Mama knew well, were burdens on wages twice the size of Papa's. But this was not mentioned now. "They're much prettier than this old house," said Helen. "I have friends I'd just as soon not bring here. And I have other friends that wouldn't come down this far for anything unless they were in a taxi." Yesterday, Maude Martha would have attacked her. Tomorrow she might. Today she said nothing. She merely gazed at a little hopping robin in the tree, her tree, and tried to keep the fronts of her eyes dry. "Well, I do know," said Mama, turning her hands over and over, "that I've been getting tireder and tireder and tireder of doing that firing. From October to April, there's firing to be done." "But lately we've been helping, Harry and I," said Maude Martha. "And sometimes in March and April and in October and even in November, we could build a little fire in the fireplace. Sometimes the weather was just right for that." She knew from the way they looked at her that this had been a mistake. They did not want to cry. But she felt that the little line of white, sometimes rigid with smoked purple, and all that cream-shot saffron would never drift across any western sky except that in back of this house. The rain would drum with as sweet a dullness nowhere but here. The birds on South Park were mechanical birds, no better than the poor caught canaries in those rich women's sun parlors. "It's just going to kill Papa," burst out Maude Martha. "He loves this house. He lives for this house." "He lives for us," said Helen. "It's us he loves. He wouldn't want the house except for us." "And he'll have us," added Mama, "wherever." "You know," Helen sighed, "if you want to know the truth, this is a relief. If this hadn't come up, we would have gone on, just dragged on, hanging out here forever." "It might," allowed Mama. "It might be an act of God. God may just have reached down and picked up the reins." "Yes," Maude Martha cracked in, "that's what you always say, that God knows best." Her mother looked at her quickly, decided the statement was not suspect, looked away. Helen saw Papa coming. "There's Papa," said Helen. They could not tell a thing from the way Papa was walking. It was that same dear little staccato walk, one shoulder down, then the other, then repeat and repeat. They watched his progress. He passed the Kennedys. He passed the vacant lot. He passed Miss Blakemore's. They wanted to hurl themselves over the fence into the street and shake the truth out of his collar. He opened his gate. The gate. And still his stride and face told them nothing. "Hello," he said. Mama got up and followed him through the front door. The girls knew better than to go in, too. Presently, Mama's head emerged. Her eyes were lamps turned on. "It's all right," she exclaimed. "He's got it. It's all over. Everything is all right." The door slammed shut. Mama's footsteps hurried away. "I think," said Helen, rocking rapidly, "I think I'll give a party. I haven't given a party since I was 11. I'd like some of my friends to just casually see that we're homeowners." Of course, the point of editorialization that must be highlighted is that earlier Helen didn't want her friends to come and see this house that she was ashamed of living in, and suggested that it was in too poor a neighborhood for them to even go down there unless they were in paid-for taxi cabs. Now all of a sudden, and who can't relate to this in 2021? Now the point of pride is that we, this black family, own our home. This next author, I gotta say, this next author, this next story, I had to consider very carefully as to whether or not I wanted to read this or not. It's I don't know. I find some of the subject matter disturbing, to say the least. Disturbing enough to distract myself to want to change my reading light around here while I'm talking about it. But but here goes. This author is Toni Morrison, who lived from 1931 to 2019. She authored 12 novels. She won the Pulitzer Prize in 1988 for Beloved, which was published in 1987. And here's a crazy international thing. She won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. She was the first black woman of any nationality to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. First published in the New Yorker, February 9th of 2015. This is Sweetness by Toni Morrison. It's not my fault, so you can't blame me. I didn't do it, and I have no idea how it happened. It didn't take more than an hour after they pulled her out from between my legs for me to realize that something was wrong. Really wrong. She was so black, she scared me. Midnight black. Sudanese black. I'm light-skinned with good hair, what we call high yellow, and so is Luann's father. Ain't nobody in my family anywhere near that color. Tar is the closest I can think of, yet her hair don't go with the skin. It's different. Straight, but curly, like the hair on those naked tribes in Australia. You might think she's a throwback, but a throwback to what? You should have seen my grandmother. My grandmother, she passed for white. She married a white man and never said another word to any one of her children. Any letter she got from my mother or my aunts, she sent right back unopened. Finally, they got the message of no message and let her be. Almost all mulatto types and quadroons did that back in the day. If they had the right kind of hair, that is. Can you imagine how many white folks have Negro blood hiding in their veins? Just guess. 20%, I heard. My own mother, Lula Mae, could have passed easy, but she chose not to. She told me the price she paid for that decision. When she and my father went to the courthouse to get married, there were 2 Bibles. And they had to put their hands on the one reserved for Negroes. The other one was for white people's hands. The Bible. Can you beat that? My mother was a housekeeper for a rich white couple. They ate every meal she cooked and insisted she scrub their backs while they sat in the tub, and God knows what other intimate things they made her do, but no touching of the same Bible. Some of you probably think It's a bad thing to group ourselves according to skin color. The lighter the better. In social clubs, neighborhoods, churches, sororities, even colored schools. But how else can we hold on to a little dignity? How else can we avoid being spit on in a drugstore, elbowed at the bus stop, having to walk in the gutter to let whites have the whole sidewalk, being charged a nickel at the grocer's for a paper bag that's free to white shoppers, let alone all the name-calling? I heard about all of that and much, much more, but because my mother's skin color, she wasn't stopped from trying on hats or using the ladies' room in the department stores. And my father could try on shoes in the front part of the shoe store, not in the back room. Neither one of them would let themselves drink from a colored-only fountain, even if they were dying of thirst. I hate to say it, but from the very beginning in the maternity ward, the baby, Lula Ann, embarrassed me. Her birth skin was pale, like all babies, even African ones. But it changed fast. I thought I was going crazy when she turned blue-black right before my eyes. I know I went crazy for a minute because just for a few seconds, I held a blanket over her face and pressed. But I couldn't do that, no matter how much I wished she hadn't been born with that terrible color. I even thought of giving her away to an orphanage someplace, but I was scared to be one of those mothers who leave their babies on church steps. Recently, I heard about a couple in Germany, white as snow, who had a dark-skinned baby nobody could explain. Twins, I believe, one white, one colored. But I don't know if it's true. All I know is that for me, nursing her was like having a pickaninny sucking at my teat. I went to bottle feeding soon as I got home. My husband, Louis, is a porter. And when he got back off the rails, he looked at me like I was crazy. And he looked at the baby like she was from the planet Jupiter. He wasn't a cussing man, so when he said, "God damn, what the hell is this?" I knew we were in trouble. That was what did it. What caused the fights between me and him. It broke our marriage to pieces. We had 3 good years together, but when she was born, he blamed me and treated Lula Ann like she was a stranger. More than that, an enemy. He never touched her. I never did convince him that I ain't never fooled around with another man, ever. He was dead sure I was lying. We argued and argued till I told him her blackness had to be from his own family, not mine. That was when it got worse. So bad he just up and left, and I had to look for another, cheaper place to live. I did the best I could. I knew enough not to take her with me when I applied to landlords, so I left her with a teenage cousin to babysit. I didn't take her outside much anyway, because when I pushed her in the baby carriage, people would lean down and peek in to say something nice and then give a start or a jump back before frowning. That hurt. I could have been the babysitter if our skin colors were reversed. It was hard enough just being a colored woman, even a high yellow one, trying to rent in a decent part of the city. Back in the 1990s, when Lula Ann was born, the law was against discriminating in who you could rent to, but not many landlords paid attention to it. They made up reasons to keep you out, but I got lucky with Mr. Lee, though I know he upped the rent $7 from what he advertised, and he had a fit if you were a minute late with the money. I told her to call me Sweetness instead of Mother, or instead of Mama. It was safer. Her being that black and having what I think are two thick lips and calling me Mama would have confused people. Besides, she has funny colored eyes. Crow black with a blue tint. Something witchy about them, too. So, it was just us two for a long while, and I don't have to tell you how hard it was being an abandoned wife. I guess Lewis felt a little bit bad after leaving us like that, because a few months later on, he found out where I'd moved to and started sending me money once a month, though I never asked him to, and didn't go to court to get it. His $50 money orders and my night job at the hospital got me and Luann off welfare, which was a good thing. I wish they would stop calling it welfare and go back to the word they used when my mother was a girl. Then it was called relief. It sounds much better. It's like it's just a short-term breather while you get yourself together again. Besides, those welfare clerks are mean as spit. When finally I got work and didn't need them anymore, I was making more money than they ever did. I guess meanness filled out their skimpy paychecks, which was why they treated us like beggars. Especially when they looked at Lula Ann and then back at me like I was trying to cheat or something. Things got better, but I still had to be careful. Very careful in how I raised her. I had to be strict. Very strict. Lula Ann needed to learn how to behave. How to keep her head down and not make trouble. I don't care how many times she changes her name. Her color is a cross she will always carry. But it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not. Oh, yeah, I feel bad sometimes about how I treated Lula Ann when she was little, but you have to understand, I had to protect her. She didn't know the world. With that skin, there was no point in being tough or sassy, even when you were right, not in a world where you could be sent to a juvenile lockup for talking back or fighting in school, a world where you'd be the last one hired and the first one fired. She didn't know any of that, or how her black skin would scare white people or make them laugh and try to trick her. I once saw a girl nowhere near as dark as Lula Ann, who couldn't have been more than 10 years old, tripped by one of a group of white boys, and when she tried to scramble up, another one put his foot on her behind and knocked her flat again. Those boys held their stomachs and bent over with laughter. Long after she got away, they were still giggling, just so proud of themselves. If I hadn't been watching through the bus window, I would have helped her, pulled her away from that white trash. See, if I hadn't trained Lula Ann properly, she wouldn't have known to always cross the street and avoid the white boys. But the lessons I taught her paid off, and in the end, She made me proud as a peacock. I wasn't a bad mother. You have to know that. But I may have done some hurtful things to my only child because I had to protect her. I had to. All because of skin privileges. At first, I couldn't see past all that black to know who she was and just plain love her. But I do. I really do. I think she understands now. I think so. Last 2 times I saw her, she was, well, striking. Kind of bold and confident. Each time she came to see me, I forgot just how black she really was because she was using it to her advantage in beautiful white clothes. Taught me a lesson I should have known all along. What you do to children matters. And they might not ever forget. As soon as she could, she left me all alone in that awful apartment. She got as far away from me as she could. Dolled herself up, got a big-time job in California. She don't call or visit anymore. She sends me money and stuff every now and then, but I ain't seen her in I don't know how long. I prefer this place, Winston House, to those big, expensive nursing homes outside the city. Mine is small, homey, cheaper, with 24-hour nurses and a doctor who comes twice a week. I'm only 63, too young for pasture, but I came down with some creeping bone disease, so good care is vital. The boredom is worse than the weakness or the pain, but the nurses are lovely. One just kissed me on the cheek when I told her I was going to be a grandmother. Her smile and her compliments were fit for someone about to be crowned. I showed her the note on blue paper that I got from Lula Ann. Well, she signed it bride, but I never pay that any attention. Her words sounded giddy. Guess what, sweetness? I am so happy to pass along this news. I'm going to have a baby. I'm too thrilled and hope you are too. I reckon the thrill is about the baby, not its father, but she doesn't mention him at all. I wonder if he is as black as she is. If so, she needn't worry like I did. Things have changed a mite from when I was young. Blue blacks are all over TV, in fashion magazines, commercials, even starring in movies. There's no return address on the envelope. So I guess I'm still the bad parent, being punished forever till the day I die for the well-intended and, in fact, necessary way I brought her up. I know she hates me. Our relationship is down to her sending me money. I have to say I'm grateful for the cash because I don't have to beg for the extras like some of the other patients do. If I want my own fresh deck of cards for solitaire, I can get it and not need to play with the dirty, worn one in the lounge. I can buy my special face cream, but I'm not fooled. I know the money she sends is a way to stay away and quiet down the little bit of conscience she's got left. If I sound irritable, ungrateful, part of it is because underneath is regret. All the little things I didn't do or did wrong. I remember when she had her first period and how I reacted. Or the times I shouted when she stumbled or dropped something. True, I was really upset, even repelled by her black skin when she was born. And at first I thought of no. I have to push those memories away fast. There's no point. I know I did the best for her under the circumstances. When my husband ran out on us, Lula Ann was a burden, a heavy one. But I bore it well. Yes, I was tough on her. You bet I was. By the time she turned 12 going on 13, I had to be even tougher. She was talking back, refusing to eat what I cooked, primping her hair. When I braided it, she'd go to school and unbraid it. I couldn't let her go bad. I slammed the lid and warned her about the names she'd be called. Still, some of my schooling must have rubbed off. See how she turned out? A rich career girl. Can you beat it? Now she's pregnant. Good move, Lula Ann. If you think mothering is all cooing booties and diapers, you're in for a big shock. Big. You and your nameless boyfriend, husband, pickup, whoever, imagine. Ooh, a baby. Kitschy, kitschy, coo. But listen to me. You're about to find out what it takes. How the world is. How it works. How it changes when you're a parent. Good luck. And God help the child. Wow. So, this next author is brought to us twitching sleeping cat dreaming. I gotta say, I think the Harlem Renaissance is one of the most awesome names for any epoch, literary or otherwise. Langston Hughes lived from 1902 to 1967. He was a central figure in the Harlem Renaissance, the flowering of the black intellectual, literary, and artistic life that took place in the 1920s in a number of American cities, most especially Harlem. A major poet, Hughes also wrote novels, short stories, essays, and plays. This is one of my mom's favorite poems. And my earliest childhood memory of this particular poem, I read this for the first time when I was 11 years old in Tom Hawkins music class because we were studying recorder. It's like the little plastic flute that a lot of us learn in like junior high or slightly early. And I was also learning melodies and how the melodies can go, how appropriately, metaphorically, from the white keys to the black keys on a piano. Oddly, I can remember that melody to this day as though I had just learned it last week, but it was set to Dreams by Langston Hughes. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field covered with snow. Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor. Bare. But all the time I've been climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps, 'cause you finds it's kinder hard. Don't you fall now, for I's still going, honey. I's still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stair. There's one more by Langston Hughes. I, too, sing America by Langston Hughes. I, too, sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I, too, am America. You know, I was going to edit for time, but I take it back. I'm going to do one more by Langston Hughes. This is As I Grew Older by Langston Hughes. It was a long time ago. I've almost forgotten my dream, but it was there then in front of me, bright like a sun, my dream. And then the wall rose slowly, slowly between me and my dream, rose until it touched the sky, the wall, shadow. I am black. I lie down in the shadow. No longer the light of my dream before me, above me, only the thick wall, only the shadow. My hands, my dark hands, break through the wall, find my dream. Help me to shatter this darkness, to smash this night, to break this shadow into 1,000 lights of sun, into 1,000 whirling dreams of sun. Whew. So, I mentioned earlier in the show that I was going to come back to Paul Laurence Dunbar. Because Paul Laurence Dunbar so inspired Dr. Gwendolyn Brooks that she had a bust of him next to where she wrote. But he also, in a very signature way, inspired the immortal Maya Angelou. I'm going to read you a poem by Laurence Dunbar that I'm sure you will recognize. Even if you've never heard this poem before, you will instantly see what this poem later inspired. Published in 1899, this is Sympathy by Paul Laurence Dunbar. I know what the caged bird feels. Alas, when the sun is bright on the upland slopes, when the wind stirs soft through the springing grass, and the river flows like a stream of glass, when the first bird sings and the last bud opes and the faint perfume from its chalice steals, I know what the caged bird feels. I know why the caged bird beats his wing till its blood is red on the cruel bars, for he must fly back to his perch and cling when he fain would be on the bough a swing. And a pain still throbs in the old scars. They pulse again with a keener sting. I know why he beats his wing. I know why the caged bird sings. Ah, me, when his wing is bruised and his bosom sore, when he beats his bars and when he would be free, it is not a carol of joy or glee, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. I know why the caged bird sings. This next short story is a lighter one. I read this same Wikipedia entry once about a month ago in Fireside Tailes with Wolfgang. I've got to read it again just to give you a little bit of necessary background on Maya Angelou. At the age of 8, while living with her mother, Angelou was sexually abused and raped by her mother's boyfriend, a man named Freeman. She told her brother, who told the rest of their family. Freeman was found guilty but was jailed for only 1 day. 4 days after his release, he was murdered. Probably by Maya Angelou's uncles. Angelou became mute for almost 5 years, believing, as she stated, quote, "I thought my voice killed him. I killed that man because I told his name. And then I thought I would never speak again because my voice would kill anyone." According to Marcia Ann Gillespie and her colleagues who wrote a biography about Angelou, it was during this period of silence when Angelou developed her extraordinary memory, her love for books and literature, and her ability to listen and observe the world around her. Shortly after Freeman's murder, when Angelou was 8 and her brother 9, Angelou and her brother were sent back to their grandmother. Here's the pertinent bit relating to the following story. Angelou credits a teacher and friend of her family, Miss Bertha Flowers, with helping her speak again. Miss Flowers introduced her to authors such as Charles Dickens, William Shakespeare, authors who would affect her life and career, as well as black female artists like Frances Harper, Anne Spencer, and Jessie Faucette. So this story was published in the book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Miss Flowers is an autobiographical short story by Maya Angelou. Miss Bertha Flowers was the aristocrat of black stamps. She had the grace of control to appear warm in the coldest weather, and on Arkansas summer days, it seemed she had a private breeze which swirled around, cooling her. She was thin without the taut look of wiry people, and her printed voile dresses and flowered hats were as right for her as denim overalls for a farmer. She was our side's answer to the richest white woman in town. Her skin was a rich black that would have peeled like a plum if snagged, but then no one would have thought of getting close enough to Mrs. Flowers to ruffle her dress, let alone snag her skin. She didn't encourage familiarity. She wore gloves, too. I don't think I ever saw Mrs. Flowers laugh, but she smiled often. A slow widening of her thin black lips to show even small white teeth. Then the slow, effortless closing. When she chose to smile on me, I always wanted to thank her. The action was so graceful and inclusively benign. She was one of the few gentlewomen I have ever known, and has remained throughout my life the measure of what a human being can be. One summer afternoon, sweet milk fresh in my memory, she stopped at the store to buy provisions. Another Negro woman of her health and age would have been expected to carry the paper sacks home in one hand, but Mama said, "Sister Flowers, I'll send Bailey up to your house with these things." She smiled, that slow, dragging smile. "Thank you, Miss Henderson. I'd prefer Marguerite, though." My name was beautiful when she said it. I've been meaning to talk to her anyway. They gave each other age group looks. There was a little path beside the rocky road, and Mrs. Flowers walked in front, swinging her arms and picking her way over the stones. She said, without turning her head to me, "I hear you're doing very good schoolwork, Marguerite, but that it's all written. The teachers report that they have trouble getting you to talk in class." We passed the triangular farm on our left, and the path widened to allow us to walk together. I hung back in the separate, unasked, and unanswerable questions. "Come and walk along with me, Marguerite." I couldn't have refused, even if I wanted to. She pronounced my name just so nicely. Or, more correctly, she spoke each word with such clarity that I was certain a foreigner who didn't understand English could have understood her. Now, no one is going to make you talk. Possibly no one can. But bear in mind, language is man's way of communicating with his fellow man. And it is language alone which separates him from the lower animals. That was a totally new idea to me, and I'd need time to think about it. "Your grandmother says you read a lot, every chance you get. That's good, but not good enough. Words mean more than what is set down on paper. It takes the human voice to infuse them with the shades of deeper meaning." I memorized the part about the human voice infusing words. It seemed so valid and so poetic. She said she was going to give me some books, and that I must not only read them, I must read them aloud. She suggested that I try to make a sentence sound in as many different ways as possible. "I'll accept no excuse if you return a book to me that has been badly handled." My imagination boggled at the punishment I would deserve if, in fact, I did abuse a book of Mrs. Flowers. Death would be too kind and way too brief. The odors in the house surprised me. Somehow I had never connected Mrs. Flowers with food or eating or any other common experience of common people. There must have been an outhouse, too, but my mind never recorded it. The sweet scent of vanilla had met us as she opened the door. "I made tea cookies this morning. You see, I had planned to invite you for cookies and lemonade so we could have this little chat. The lemonade is in the icebox." It followed that Mrs. Flowers would have ice on an ordinary day when most families in our town bought ice late on Saturdays, only a few times during the summer to be used in the wooden ice cream freezers. She took the bags from me and disappeared through the kitchen door. I looked around the room that I had never, in my wildest fantasies, imagined I would see. Browned photographs leered or threatened from the walls, and the white, freshly done curtains pushed against themselves and against the wind. I wanted to gobble up the room entire and take it to Bailey, who would help me analyze and enjoy it. "Have a seat, Marguerite. Over there by the table." She carried a platter covered with a tea towel. Although she warned that she hadn't tried her hand at baking sweets for some time, I was certain that, like everything else about her, the cookies would be perfect. They were flat, round wafers, slightly browned on the edges and butter yellow in the center. With the cold lemonade, they were sufficient for childhood's lifelong diet. Remembering my manners, I took nice little ladylike bites off the edges. She said she had made them expressly for me, and that she had a few in the kitchen that I could take home to my brother. So I jammed one whole cake in my mouth, and the rough crumbs scratched the insides of my jaws. And if I hadn't had to swallow, it would have been a dream come true. As I ate, she began the first of what we later called my lessons in living. She said that I must always be intolerant of ignorance, but understanding of illiteracy. That some people, unable to go to school, were more educated and even more intelligent than college professors. She encouraged me to listen carefully to what country people call mother wit. That in those homely sayings was couched the collective wisdom of generations. When I finished the cookies, she brushed off the table and brought a thick, small book from the bookcase. I had read A Tale of Two Cities and found it up to my standards as a romantic novel. She opened the first page, and I heard poetry for the first time in my life. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Her voice slid in and curved down through and over the words. She was nearly singing. I wanted to look at the pages. Were they the same that I had read? Or were there notes, music lined on the pages as in a hymn book? Her sounds began cascading gently. I knew from listening to 1,000 preachers that she was nearing the end of her reading, and I hadn't really heard to understand a single word. How do you like that? It occurred to me that she expected a response. The sweet vanilla flavor was still on my tongue, and her reading was a wonder in my ears. I had to speak. I said, "Yes, ma'am." It was the least I could do. But it was the most also. I'm going to read one more little clutch of poetry, all by Maya Angelou. I thank you for staying with us. This has been a longer than average show. I said a couple of weeks ago that I asked the question of the historical figures that you could meet with casually over a game of cards or tea or bottle of whiskey. Who would they be? If Nikolai Tesla were slightly tipsy, and I really don't think he drank, but if he opened up to speak more than characteristically usual, I would love to hear a brief dialogue between he and Maya Angelou, because Maya Angelou said, "Talent is like electricity. We don't understand electricity. We use it." I don't know. Tesla definitely used it, but he might have understood it too. I would just love, historically speaking, to hear his retort to that adage. I personally got to hear Maya Angelou speak one time at the Fox Theater in downtown St. Louis. She was born Marguerite Annie Johnson in 1928. She was born in St. Louis, Missouri. At the age of 86, she died in 2014. This poem is Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind rights. Nights of terror and fear I rise, into a daybreak that's wondrously clear I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. So, as I mentioned several times, Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem Sympathy was the obvious and quite widely stated inspiration for this last poem. This is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. The free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wings in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with fearful trill of the things unknown, but longed for still. And his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn, and he calls the names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown, but longed for still. And his tune is heard on the distant hill. For the caged bird sings of freedom. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Barring the distinct possibility of power outs in the next 24 hours that will come with the high wind snowstorms forecasted for the next 24 hours, there will be a new music video on Hunter's Acoustic Cabin Wednesday at 11 a.m. And I will see you Thursday night at 6 p.m. for Lovecast number 40. Deep Sky dude, I'm so glad this helped you feel better, man. Thank you, Claire Bear. I love you too. So